So good evening from Malaysia again. Specifically, I'm actually in Penang. So I'm actually Rachel from CI Agile. So welcome back to Move Forward Asia Day 3. Today is the last day of our pre-event, and we are going to talk about the strength of SAFe framework. So this intention of this summit is actually for everyone to understand different frameworks so that you guys can have a better overview on what actually a framework is, what are the design logics, how to actually apply it in your business so that it help your business to achieve agility as well as top performing teams. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this session to Ethan to introduce our very special guest.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ethan. Thanks for coming in. We have Ian Spence with us. Ian Spence is a fellow of SAFe. There are about less than 30 people that achieved the CAF credential. Surprisingly, I learned Scrum and Scale from Ian. When I took my Scrum and Scale course, Ian was there sitting next to me, right? He was the teaching assistant in that course. And Ian is already very, very good with SAFe that time. He was already a SAFe fellow. So I was having the pleasure of asking him a lot of questions about the possibility of two frameworks combining together and things like that. So, so if you are really interested in doing something to help your organization, I always have the idea that you can pick and choose whatever you like and implement whatever makes sense to you. You can implement just purely SAFe, purely Scrum and Scale, purely like discipline, Agile, or less, or whatever. There might be some potential for crossover as well. And we really need someone that's in both, that's familiar with 2 or 3 frameworks in order to do that. There are a lot of talks as well, me with other trainers in Scrumming that we are trying to combine some sort of Scrum and Scale with SAFe. Yeah, but today we have Ian Spence, a real expert of SAFe. It's really hard to be a SAFe fellow. And Ian, please take it away. Please introduce yourself. I'm afraid that my introduction didn't do you any justice, right? So take it away, Ian.
Okay, so can you see the slides?
Yes.
Good. So, as Ethan said, I am a SAFe fellow. I'm a contributor. I have articles in the SAFe knowledge base. I am a SPCT, which means I've trained lots of people to be SPCs who can then train and coach companies in the introduction of the Scaled Agile framework. Me and my colleague Brian were the first 2 SPCTs in Europe. I was the first SAFe fellow. Brian is now a SAFe fellow as well. But at one point, we'd done over 50% of the training of SPCs in Europe, well over 1,000 people certified. And been doing SAFe since the very beginning and have used it in loads of different organizations to do Agile at scale. Now, a few of the highlights on here. Deutsche Bank was one of my first SAFe engagements. They'd been doing Agile, a lot of teams doing Agile, but they were going nowhere. They weren't integrating, they weren't delivering. They adopted SAFe and they went on to be the most successful team within their area, enterprise risk technology within Deutsche Bank. They have been doing SAFe for 5 years or more, and they won 5 industry awards, proper industry awards, not awards for doing SAFe, because of their SAFe implementation. And they're now rolling SAFe out to the 3,000 people in enterprise risk technology. As well as banking, I've done Sony, rolled SAFe out, 7 different release trains, several thousand people to do all of their back-end systems for Sony Entertainment. I was with the business intelligence people. I've done work at Ericsson where we're building switches. The Elector, that machine on there is a thing called the Elector Gamma Knife. This is a device where you put this thing on your head and it shoots beams of gamma radiation, laser beams, into your brain, and where they cross over, it does cellular level brain surgery. They are developing the software and hardware for those devices using SAFe. And my favorite subject at the moment is I'm doing a lot of work with space. The European Space Agency are going to be building their new ground network for the satellites. It's thousands of people for many years. They're going to use SAFE for that. And the Square Kilometre Array, which is the world's biggest radio telescope, it's in Wikipedia if you want to look it up. It's going to be the biggest science facility man has ever built. And they're building the software for that, distributed and dispersed around the world using the Scaled Agile framework. And they're being very successful. So lots of different industries, lots of different things. The thing that's common is these are big things. Right? As well as SAFE, as Ethan said, I also have been working with Jeff Sutherland. I'm probably one of the few people who this week has had calls with both Dean Leffingwell to discuss content for SAFE and Jeff Sutherland to talk about the Scrum Essentials cards that we've been developing. And Scrum at Scale is another good framework for this kind of thing. So, what's the role of frameworks? It's probably a good place to start. Take a step back. Think about what is it frameworks are for. If you look up the definition of framework, they are just the basic conceptual structure of things, like a framework of ideas, a partial solution, the structure of a building. And this is what our Agile frameworks are. They give us a conceptual structure to help us do Agile at scale. And they allow you to plug and play with other elements. And frameworks are a kind of model. And this is my favorite quote about models from George E.P. Box. All models are wrong, but some are useful. Right? You could argue, if you want to be contrary, I'm sure you can find something in every published framework that you can disagree with. The question is, are they useful? And my experience is that these scaling frameworks, they're models of organizational structures. They're always around teams, how you should structure your teams, and work, how you should structure the backlogs. And they provide best practices to help you be successfully. And they are very useful. They are incredibly useful because it means we don't have to invent everything ourselves. We can draw on tried and tested solutions. It was quite a big step for the company E.V. Jacobsen International to sign up with SAFE, even though we'd all known Dean for a long time. I had the job of looking at the framework and I analysed that framework, and it's not broken. Right? If you do what it says, you will be more agile than any traditional way of working. Now, are you going to be the most agile company in the world? Are you going to be trailblazing new ways of working like Spotify? Probably not. But if you are a traditional organization, it works and it will make you more agile. So they're very useful. They give you that step up. Because going agile is not about adopting a framework. It's a journey. We all talk about, the agile journey. And it's a long journey, and it's a journey that never ends. So when we start on our agile journey, we're somewhere. Many companies not agile at all. Many other companies, pockets of agility, some Scrum, some Kanban, maybe a bit of SAFE, a bit of Scrum at Scale. Some organizations are already agile from top to bottom, generally smaller organizations. So what is a framework? A framework is there to accelerate your agile journey. It gives you a starting point. Okay, this is how we should set up. We don't have to think about it. We can follow that advice. This is how we're going to set up. And SAFE is particularly good at moving large numbers of people, help you lift and shift your organization. If you've got 1,000 people and you put them all into Scrum teams, you're going to have over 100 Scrum teams. If you go around 100 Scrum teams, one at a time, teaching them how to be agile and coaching them for a few sprints so they get the hang of agility, if you go around all of them and do that before you scale, it will be too late. It will be 2 years, 3 years more down the line. I was with one company, I worked out that their current rate of progress it would take them 4.5 years before they had basic agility across the whole area. So it's great to help you lift and shift your organization and put in place structures and practices that encourage agility. It's your starting point. As you learn and apply those practices, as you get more agile, because agile is not a practice you follow, it's a way of thinking, continuously improve. If you do a good job, you will move beyond your framework, but it's that great starting point to get you going. And it accelerates that journey. And the thing to remember is there is no final destination on your improvement journey. A lot of these ideas come, from Toyota, from Kaizen, relentless improvement. Doesn't matter how good you are, you can always get better. And we've got evolutionary improvements and we've got more revolutionary improvements. Introducing a scaling framework to a traditional organization is revolutionary and going to be a large amount of change. But as that framework beds down, you will add and learn and continuously improve as you go forward. Because Agile is all about culture. And this is a nice picture of Alistair Coburn, and he's promoting the heart of Agile: collaboration, improvement, reflection, delivery, having openness, having a dialogue, continuous learning. And he's saying that he did this really good. I highly recommend people listen to the podcast in that link. It's very good. It was Agile talking about, Alistair talking about things like the original Agile Manifesto, because Alistair actually set up the meeting in Aspen that the Agile Manifesto came out of. Right? He got people along to that. But the people who were running it, this podcast, obviously didn't like SAFe. So they were trying to get Alistair to say nasty things about SAFe, and he wouldn't do it. He said, there's nothing wrong with SAFe. I'm paraphrasing, can't remember the exact quote. But he said, there's nothing wrong with SAFe. It's got everything in it, right? Prove to me it doesn't work. Don't just take pot shots, It's there for scaling. And most people would rather not scale. Right? The first law of scaling is don't scale. But if you have to, if you're Ericsson, if you're the Square Kilometre Array, if you're the European Space Agency, you can't tell them not to scale. It's going to take them years with 1,000 people. These aren't things that can be done quickly. What they want is to be able to scale linearly, and they need those things. So very good. But remember, the framework is not your goal. Agility is your goal. It's just a tool to help you get there. And when you think about a framework, think about what you want from your framework. And this is the mistake that people make. These images are taken from a very good video by David Marquet, who was a nuclear submarine commander, all about leadership. But the messages apply because he's talking about empowering people, right? And what we want from our framework is innovation and collaboration and less bureaucracy. And as we scale, that's a challenge because scaling tends to lead to more bureaucracy. What we don't want from the framework is instructions and compliance, even more bureaucracy. The intent of SAFe is not that you do everything in it. It's that you use it as a framework, but when you do need to do something, it explains how to do it. It doesn't leave you with challenges, but with no candidate solution for them. But there are other ways to do those things, but the framework is there. Because in the video, Mr. Marquet gets a new submarine and he spent 10 years learning the old one. He's on a new one. He doesn't know what to do, so he has to empower his people. And he thought about all the things he could stop doing, like giving orders, right? Being a typical stereotype Hollywood submarine commander, secure the hatches, starboard 5 degrees, down 50 fathoms. And he thought about, okay, what is it I do need to keep hold of, right? Oh, and that bit's gone. And he said the thing you need to keep hold of on the submarine is the button to fire the missiles. So in our framework, we want intent. This is aspirational. It's what we'd like people to do, what we'd like people to think and stuff like that. And we're going to need to keep control of something. And what we need to keep control of is what's called our minimum viable bureaucracy, the little common operating model. If we don't have that minimum viable bureaucracy, if we don't balance between chaos on one side, which is what a lot of Agile does, and bureaucracy and red tape, which is traditional organisations, what happens is our transformations will stall. We need consistency, we need transparency. We can't communicate if everyone is using a different language, if everyone has different job titles, everyone has different roles. We can't do data decision making if we don't have consistent measurements and metrics. So many organisations have pockets of good Agile undermined by fake Agile and non-Agile stuff, right? And the Agile is only team level. I did some work at a company called Saxo Bank in Copenhagen, and we were introducing this idea of a minimum set of standard stuff, a common operating model to join the top of the organisation to the bottom. And I was talking to Jeff Sutherland about this, and he said, oh, Saxo Bank, I know them. I was in there 20 years ago. Right? So 20 years they've been doing Scrum, and they've been doing it well. The work we did with lean portfolio management to join everything up was the first time they had any change in the way their executives behaved after 20 years of Scrum. And this is the challenge. We need to join up things top to bottom. We need a common language for everyone to talk. And if we only have team level Agile, everyone doing their own thing, it's like a Tower of Babel, and you'll never get to an Agile enterprise. So this idea of the common operating model, this is the slide I thought was going to be earlier, is very powerful. Now this diagram comes from the work of Henrik Nieberg. And now Henrik is the man who made the Spotify model popular, right? He's also the man who rolled out SAFe at Lego. I believe he once did a conference presentation where he was basically had a thing titled, What's Wrong with SAFe? And he walked onto the stage. Hello, I'm Henrik. I'm here to tell you what's wrong with SAFe. He said nothing and proceeded to walk off. Right. Then he came back and explained why there was nothing wrong with it. He rolled out SAFe to accelerate agility at Lego, and there's case studies about that. But this idea of Agile teetering between chaos and bureaucracy is what really causes a lot of things to fail. If you don't have a common operating model to provide focus, reduce decision latency, allow you to experiment safely, get common measures, eliminate waste, that common language, right? You're either going to burn in the flames of chaos there, no one knows what's going on, or you are going to end up having too much bureaucracy. Okay, and you will die on the stakes of bureaucracy. Okay, so what we want from the framework is to provide us with that common operating model. Now, they all provide you with more than that, but hiding in them is that common operating model that will see you through your Agile journey. And SAFe gives you very good definitions of the vocabulary, the terminology, the backlog items, the job roles that you need, that allows you to start do the measurement that drives things out. Okay, so frameworks are there to give you a quick start and help you join the very top, the executive to the teams. Without joining things from top to bottom, you will get pockets of agility, but not an Agile business. So I'd like to know, just take a look at how SAFe works. Many of you have seen this picture, right? Or some variant of it. It's the SAFe big picture. It's been very popular. It's the entry point into the huge, freely available knowledge base that they provide on the Scaled Agile Framework website. And it's a little bit intimidating. it looks like there's a lot there because SAFE covers a lot of topics. There's a lot of advice. And what you need to understand is, what is that common operating model? What's the bit that makes it work? What's going on under the covers? So, as with most of the frameworks, SAFE is built on top of Scrum, on the idea of nothing beats an Agile team. And an Agile team will be the size of a Scrum team, typically 3 to 9 people plus Scrum Master, Product Owner. The standard roles will be Scrum Master and Product Owner. People need to get over their addiction to buzzwords and frameworks and stuff and understand what's the accountability. Because even if you're doing Kanban, those 2 roles exist, those 2 sets of accountability. And we'll have a cross-functional team that can get the job done. So if our job is developing software, that's at the very least doing development and testing. With continuous deployment, it's getting into the DevOps, the deployment pipeline. Regardless of what you're doing, the Agile team is your one-stop shop for working stuff. Okay, and these teams should be empowered, self-organized, self-managing. We'd like them to stay together so they can become high-performing teams, preferably co-located, although now we're seeing very more dispersed teams, everybody working from home. Produces, gets things done at least every 2 weeks, exemplifies Agile values. Now, when you have lots of teams working together, as SAFE would do, it's a good idea to have everyone on the same heartbeat so that this organisation is at rest. And in SAFE, we standardise on a 2-week sprint. That doesn't stop a team doing 2 one-week sprints, but 2 weeks is the Goldilocks length for sprints. It's not too short and it's not too long. It's just about right. Now, if we're just building a small product, we have a team and they have a product backlog, and the product owner owns the priorities in that product backlog. We have a small team. They are going to have a backlog full of stories. Stories are small things that should fit inside a sprint. There's various kinds of story, but basically the team needs to have work items coming in that are small enough they can do inside a sprint. Otherwise we'll get no closure. And because we're just one team, we think of it as our system and we own the definition of done. Now, if you think about how many stories does a Scrum team, an Agile team, typically do in 2-week sprint? Now, obviously, some teams will do more than others, but people like Valley Software, Atlassian, have got huge cloud-based repositories of teams' backlogs and stuff. And it turns out that typically, on average, Scrum team does 10 stories every 2 weeks. So we've got our system out there. It's going great. Everyone loves it. People want to buy it. And they're asking for stuff. We'd like to grow. We'd like this system to get bigger. We'd like to take on more, do more. And we look at our plans and we see that if we only have one team doing 10 stories every 2 weeks, it's going to take us eternity to get where we want to go. In fact, to get where we want to go, we might need to be doing 50 stories every 2 weeks, 100 stories every 2 weeks. So what are you going to do? If you start adding teams and all those teams think they have their own system, if they have their own definition of done, what happens? The teams all start going off in different directions. The results of their work don't get integrated together. Right? They all test their system with stubs and old versions of the others. It doesn't get integrated. This is meant to be a single product. So what SAFE says is, it's a single product, so we need to have a single system. We also think about, if I have 10 teams doing 10 stories every 2 weeks, how am I going to prioritize the backlog? Could you prioritize 100 stories in a list every 2 weeks? And what about the team that always gets the bottom 10 stories? How are they going to feel? Right? How would you do that? How would you cope with that? That's going to be incredibly difficult. I've seen a product owner support 2 Scrum teams, maybe 3 small Scrum teams from 1 story level product backlog. But beyond that, it breaks down. Really does break down. You can't keep up. Product owners have to have conversations continually with the team. They just can't do it. So what SAFE does is say, let's bring the teams together into what's called an Agile release train. This is a team of teams. And typically it's 50 to 125 plus people. The number of teams is similar to the number of people you would have in a Scrum team, up to about 10 teams. And we're going to have one shared backlog. Now in SAFE, they call this the program backlog. You could think of it as being the product backlog for our shared system. We now have one system, which is the integration of everything the teams do. We may have teams that own pieces of the system. We may have common code ownership, but it's one system. And we're going to have a shared definition of done for the whole thing. And we're going to see an increment of that system at least every sprint. Now, many people now can do this on a daily basis, but for a lot of big systems, having a fully integrated system every 2 weeks is one of the big challenges they need to address early in their adoption. The backlog is not going to be full of stories. SAFE makes feature a first-class citizen. And so a feature will require many stories. Those stories could be done by many teams in parallel, or they could all be done by one team. The teams can swarm around the features the way team members swarm around stories. And we're going to need some additional guidance for this team of teams. If a team needs a Scrum Master, a team of teams needs a Scrum's Master, right? Someone who's going to be the Scrum Master for the team of teams. Now that could be a full-time job, or it could be one of the Scrum Masters taking on that. In SAFE, that role is called the Release Train Engineer. And in my experience, it's never less than a full-time job, right? Very fulfilling job, but very hard work. We're going to need someone to own that program backlog, own that backlog full of features. Now, you could think of them as a chief product owner, but in SAFE, that's the product manager. And they may need some help to do this as well, but they can draw on the team of product owners. The other thing that large systems need is they need intentional architecture. Someone needs to own technical excellence. And so we're going to have architects at that program, at that art level. No matter, my favorite quote about architecture is about simplicity. It's not enough to build simplicity in. We have to work every hour of every day to maintain simplicity. Right? Otherwise, the system will degrade, technical debt, things will grind to a halt. So we need that intentional architecture across the top. So all SAFE is doing really is recursing the idea of a team up to a team of teams that it calls an Agile release train. The more unique thing that SAFE adds is the idea of a bigger time box, a sprint of sprints, as it were, which it calls a program increment. So this is a time box of 8 to 12 weeks. So all the teams are on the same heartbeat. So all sprint 1 at the same time, then 2, then 3. And we put that inside this bigger box, this program increment. It's 8 to 12 weeks, 10 is the default, that's the Goldilocks length. Often it lines up with your funding cycle, which is why 12 almost quarterly kind of time boxes. We can adjust the priority of the features on the fly and the stories on the fly. Money doesn't move that quickly. Hiring and firing people doesn't move that quickly. For investment and business purposes, this big time box is really powerful. And SAFE exploits this by having a big room planning event where everyone in all the teams gets together to discuss the kind of thing they think they'll be doing over the next 12 weeks. It's more backlog refinement than it is planning. Because in that session is when teams take features, come up with their own stories. So don't think of it as 2 days of planning, think of it as 2 days of backlog refinement. And by doing it together, we can spot the overlap between features. We can put them in the natural order. We can make sure there's not too much contention over the bits of the systems. We can let the teams work that out rather than project managers, architects, and planners. So, I mean, that is essential SAFE in a nutshell, right? There's nothing particularly contentious about that. Some people don't like the big time box. I find that if you want to get to the portfolio, the executive level, talk about money, it's incredibly valuable. and it doesn't have to be over planned. It's about understanding what's going on and doing challenges. Because above this, we have the final layer of SAFE, the portfolio layer. This is all about investment. And at this level, we have a backlog, and it's full of what SAFE calls epics. This isn't what a lot of other Agile people call epics. It's not a big story, right? It's a big initiative. It's something which has clear, measurable business results, business outcomes, that is going to typically require longer than one PI, launching a new business, creating a self-driving car. We're going to get that done in 12 weeks, right? And requires not just collaboration within the trains, but across the trains. They're big cross-cutting. I've never seen an organization that doesn't have those cross-cutting initiatives, right? So, and this is and what this is all about is investment. Now, when you get up to this executive layer, this portfolio management layer, it's difficult to say to somebody, you are now a Scrum Master or a portfolio train engineer, okay? Typically, it's not a named individual in the same way, but we have the same aspects. Investment strategy and funding is the overall product ownership for the portfolio of products, deciding where we're going to spend our money. Agile portfolio operations is the ultimate home of where the Scrum Masters will come. That's where all of the measures and things will be gathered up, contracts will be taken care of. And because most of these big systems need to have governance. Even if your system is not safety critical, you need financial governance. I've seen companies where Agile teams are actually behaving illegally because they're no longer doing the financial governance that's needed. Think about CapEx and OpEx, if you're familiar with those, capital expenditure, operational expenditure. A major consultancy company told one of our customers that if you're Agile, everything has to be operational expense, it can't be capitalized. Now, that's provably incorrect, right? In fact, Agile, you can capitalize more stuff. But from a business perspective, it's very dangerous because spending money as CapEx is worth almost twice as much as spending it as OpEx, the tax differences. So you can't ignore those things just because you're bought into the Agile hysteria. And we're looking at those measurable business results. So that SAFE is working across all of those layers and providing lots of practices to do things at scale. Right. Now, obviously, if you have a portfolio of small products with a small number of Scrum teams, and you could do portfolio and just have Scrum underneath. Right? You only need the Agile release trains when you're building truly large integrated solutions. Okay, so it's a very simple fractal structure, but there's a lot of stuff in there. So when you're going on your transformation, right, you've got to understand why you're doing it. Change is hard. Change programs have a failure rate of 50 to 70%. Right? The failure rate of change is higher than development. And that's across the board. Right? Because of that, most Agile transformations, regardless of the framework they pick, right, are going to fail. The number one reason they fail is they don't show business results. Right? You ask them, how's the Agile transformation going? We've got 100 Scrum, we've trained 100 Scrum Masters and 50 product owners. We have more patches than we know what to do with, right? Certified Scrum Masters, licensed, certified, whatever. Oh, and the business people are going, so what? What difference has it made, right? I know people like to say, well, Agile isn't about being more efficient. It's not about this, it's not about that. But the bottom line is, you're going Agile because you want to get better, not because you want to get worse. And that needs to be visible. So start with the end in mind. Work with your business to understand what are the benefits that you are looking for. Is it staff retention? Maybe you're losing all your staff. Is it getting more done? What is it? Don't tell them that, oh no, we're going to go Agile, but you're not going to get more features than you used to get. No one's going to pay money for that, right? So think about the benefit, make sure it's measurable and tracked. And those measures should be independent of agility. How agile you are is a vanity measure, because I don't care how agile you are. I care, are you getting good results? Can I learn from you how to get better results myself? That's what I care about. Right? There was the Volkswagen catastrophe. Do you remember Volkswagen had cheated the diesel emission test? Right? And I was at an Agile conference when that hit, and somebody stood up and said, oh, this problem has occurred because they're not agile. Right? No evidence for this. But the person I was coaching, we had a conversation, and he said, they passed the tests. I bet they were doing test-driven development. I bet they were agile doing test-driven development. Right? And it doesn't matter. What matters is that they cheated. They took their eye off the ball. And agile teams can cheat and take their eye off the ball as much as any other kind of team. So what are the benefits? What are the things you really want to measure and track that your business, your stakeholders, your investors will understand? They should be independent of agility or the framework used. I've set up these kind of measurement frameworks in organizations, and we've measured everything, the agile and the non-agile. And you'll be glad to know, agile outperforms non-agile in almost every case. But the measures are of that performance and that we're getting out. So what's your goal? This is a real example. They wanted to improve the customer experience and build the capability to scale. Now that's scaling the number of transactions they can do, right? It's scaling the number of functions that their system does, as well as being able to add more people to do more stuff, right? So scaling isn't just about having more teams working on there. So they had a client focus and a growth focus. And we need to have some balance in our measures. So in this case, we went for 4 quartiles, and it was smarter, which is where we can look at the financial benefit. Faster, we can look at cycle time. Safer and happier. Right? Because we want things to improve in terms of getting more done, but we don't want the quality to drop off. We don't want suddenly to have more incidents. I've also used better, faster, cheaper, happier. Find a set of words that resonate with your business and ask them what they would like to see happening in those areas. So the scorecard here, we wanted reduced cost per item. They wanted a lower average cost per feature. That's a reasonable goal. More importantly, they wanted to spend more of the CapEx on the top initiatives. Right? They wanted to get more of the effort, more of the investment on the important stuff, because in most organizations, people are doing features. The Standish group shows that over 30% of all features never get used. Right? And people are doing projects that were not strategic. They wanted to get faster. They wanted to increase the throughput. Right. More features released successfully, decrease the cycle time. So they wanted to get the time between asking for a feature and it being delivered down. And they wanted faster decision-making and less escalations. One of the key things that separates high-performing organizations from low-performing organizations is decision-making latency. Right, so if a team has a problem, is blocked, it should get cleared, within an hour or within a day. It shouldn't take 2 months. To balance this, they wanted it safer. So they wanted to continue their low level of incidents when they did releases. They wanted to maintain their operational service availability, but have less bugs affecting clients and staff, i.e. the people using the system. And they did want to have a happier business, happier clients, happier staff, and more sustainable teams. And these are all measurable. And you can measure these as long as you have standardized on things like backlog items. You can't measure feature throughput if some people aren't doing features. It's not going to work. Things like that. So think about that, because that's what your business people will ask for. After a year, how have these dials moved? Make sure the process is working. In SAFe, the most recommended measure is a predictability measure. And the reason that's so important is SAFe wants you to experiment. It wants you to do experiments to get improvements. If your machine is not predictable, then you have no basis for judging your experiments. Right? If your throughput is up and down and up and down and up and down, and we change something and it goes up, is that just the cycle repeating, or was it what we did? So predictability is the basis of evolutionary, sustainable, experimental improvement. Okay, so SAFe focuses that as an early goal. And then flow is key. Okay, flow metrics. Mick Kirsten, in his book From Project to Product, has done a lot around different times of flow metrics. This is a slight rehash of his work, but you need throughput. How many items are completed for a specific period or cost? Timings, what are the cycle times and the lead times? Distribution, what are the ratios between CapEx, OpEx, business features, enablers, anything, support and innovation, planned and unplanned work, but also how is it scattered across the teams? Can we get features done by one team, one train, and things like that? The final one, efficiency, is what a lot of lean people talk about. Have to be very careful with process efficiency because it often requires you to do a lot of time recording or have a lot of discipline in how you monitor the number of items done by teams. So that one's the hardest one. But if you've got flow going on, you can then adjust. You could play around. You could say, what happens if we don't do PI planning? Does flow go up or down? Things like that. And SAFe is trying to bring all of this in one integrated package. So the real strengths of SAFe are, it is the world's leading framework, right? And it integrates lean, agile, DevOps into an operating system to help you thrive. Now, you may disagree with some of the things in there, but most of the things in there aren't mandatory, right? They're just, you're going to have this problem. Here's a good way of solving it, right? So you need to be careful in your introduction. Remember the bit we talked about, just the basic mechanics of SAFe, right? And it's all in there, as Alistair Coburn said. It's got everything in it. It's got Kanban for the portfolio level, Scrum for the team level. It's got features, it's got stories, it's got continuous integration, continuous exploration, continuous delivery, it's got DevOps, DevSecOps, it's got the principles. Okay, there's a lot in there, possibly more than any individual company needs, but think of it as a library of practices you can pull on to help you solve the problems you face once you have your teams, your trains and your portfolio up and running. You can configure it. You've got different levels of configuration, full, large solution, the portfolio, essential, so you can play around and get different views of it. And it gets results. There are lots of case studies. Go to the website. When I first went on Dean's Scaled Agile, the training course, the Implementing SAFe training course, they had one slide with 4 case studies on it. I personally had more case studies than Scaled Agile. Not anymore. They've got so many, they can't even fit them all on. I'll show you a slide with a fraction of the companies, right? And it's incredibly well supported. There's lots of partners all over the world. There's huge numbers of SAFe program consultants. There are hundreds of thousands of people who know SAFe. It's great for you in a traditional organization. It's a bit like Agile. If Agile was a bike, SAFe is a bike with the trainer wheels on to help you get started. Okay, so if you're new to agility, the fact that you've got the certifications, there's a huge market, you can get people, there's experts, is hugely, hugely powerful. And here's a selection of companies that have been successful with SAFe. There's a couple of my case studies, or IGI's case studies are on there. Okay, and it's got a lot of stuff. It helps you get started. There are, you have trailblazers. One of the things, the topics was to talk about pilots. I ban the word pilot. I've known organizations who've been piloting methods for 5-10 years, right? To the people doing it, it's not a pilot. The people doing it, it's their livelihood, it's their job, it's their career, it's their product that they believe in on the line. So I call them trailblazers. Now, SAFE is about taking 5 to 10 teams on their Agile journey together. So there's no need to do an assessment. Are you Agile? No. Would you like to be Agile? Yes. Okay. Does your leadership want you to be Agile? Yes. Right. We've got the will. We've got the people. Have we got features? I've never seen anyone who needs to scale who doesn't have a longer list of features than they know what to do with. The final thing is you need a big room for the training and for the initial planning. And we have launched trains. I think the quickest we've done it is 2 weeks, right? Generally a month or so. But there's a thing called the Art Quick Start, which is a package of training and the first PI plan. It's enough to get you going. Because as Thomas Jefferson said, tell me and I forget. Teach me and I might remember. Involve me and I learn. You learn by doing, right? Get that first train up and running. Then you've got 10 teams all moving together, all learning from each other, all flagging same systemic impediments for the train level to do. So launch a train, learn by doing, and then launch more trains and more trains. And if you get to a point where everyone wants to go Agile, you can launch lots of them simultaneously. If you get them more Agile and you measure flow, you can reorganize, you can learn, oh, that's not working very well. PI planning is traditionally 2 days, Lego, they did it in 1 day. That's great. So learn and improve. And SAFE moves with the time. And in SAFE version 5, highlights include more business agility, DevSecOps, improving lean portfolio management, and the dual operating system. I was hoping to tell you a bit about the dual operating system, but I think we should keep the time for questions. So I'll just skip over that bit. Very close to my heart. I'm working on it with Dean at the moment. Okay, and just do a very quick wrap up. So what have I learned in all this scaling experience? Whoops. Scaling hurts. So don't scale if you don't have to. Right. Remember the first line of the manifesto, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. If any Agile person says you're using the wrong framework, you're not Agile because you're using SAFE, then they are not Agile themselves, because they're not looking at your performance, they're looking at your framework. That's not individual interactions over processes and tools. So anyone who tells you that you're using you're not Agile, you're doing SAFE, they're just lying. They don't know, right? Now, if they could say, you're using SAFE, how Agile have you got? Here's a way you could take it to the next level. They're the people you want to work with, not the ones who set you back to the beginning, right? Culture beats structure. Without a common operating model, without a common language, there is no business agility. So that's where the frameworks come in. They give you that operating model. And use SAFE as a precursor to descaling. We've got 1,000 people. Let's get them Agile. Now we can repurpose them to do more stuff in our organization. So frameworks really help, but don't fall in love with them. They're all useful in the right context. SAFE is particularly useful when there are large numbers of people who need to go Agile, where you've already got a big system and a lot of people, where you want to bring lean portfolio management in as well, because that's missing in a lot of the other frameworks, and where there is a traditional hierarchy. We're not dealing with a small Agile company that's trying to grow. We're dealing with a big traditional company. We need to work within that framework. That's the home ground of SAFE. If you are working with a group of teams that are already Agile, then let them pick whichever framework they want, because the culture is what will be threatened by picking the wrong one. Right? So if they're Agile, they can pick. If they're not, give them a lift up, and SAFE is a great way to do that. So hopefully that's been a nice presentation for you. And there should be some time left for questions.
Okay, great one. Thank you so much, Ian, for sharing so much insights over this on SAFE. There's a lot of new things to me personally as well. I'm not too sure about the audience, but I'm seeing a couple of questions coming in. So to the audience, if you guys still have more questions, just post it at the Q&A and I'll be starting to share it with Ian now. Okay, so the first question for you, Ian. So it's from Hiren Kumar. He's asking if development team followed SAFe or Agile, but project or delivery team works still in waterfall. How can these two marry together?
Right. So one of the big inhibitors to the benefits of Agile is traditional waterfall project management, particularly the waterfall phase gates, big upfront requirements sign off, then the design sign off and things like that. So if you don't break down and break through that wall, you will not get the kind of benefits that everyone talks about. You'll still do better. I mean, most of us started Agile by iterating within traditional project structures, right? And by, you know, the rules for nobody does a waterfall 100% strict either. But once you start iterating and people see the demos and see your responsiveness, you can start to change that culture. You can do projects Agile, right? If you still, but SAFe is saying no more projects. We're going to invest in value streams. We're going to invest in products. In the diagram that showed the layers, you may have noticed, I didn't point it out, a story doesn't have to have a feature. A feature doesn't have to have an epic. Right? And if we're going on Agile journey, we will just give the release train and the teams money to do what they like, but there will be constraints on that budget. Right? So, you know, if you're not doing any stories for the features, we're going to ask you questions, right? But if you're not doing anything other than stories for the features, we're going to ask you questions then as well, because you're not thinking for yourself, right? So you need to tackle that project culture, that project mindset. And that's where the lean portfolio management and the work Dean and the guys and girls at SAFe have been doing recently to make that stuff more accessible. They're doing SAFe for finance, a lot of work in that area to help organizations change their behavior at the top. Because if you change that, everyone will just find it easier to be agile. One of my customers, the case study is in the work, a company called LV in the UK, insurance company. We got them to do lean portfolio management. We got the PMO to make it easier to be agile than not agile. And we said to people, we're into empowerment. You can do waterfall if you like, but you're going to have to give us this and these other 50 things. Because if you're agile, you can just do this bit. Right? So get it to be business as usual.
I see. Yep, got it. Thank you for answering this question. So another question is actually from Afifi. He's actually asking that, can we use SAFe if team is not dedicated to one product?
You can use SAFe, but what we'd like is to get the teams aligned to the value streams. Right? So I have seen Agile release trains where the teams look after multiple products, right? But those products probably part of the same product set. There's some overall mission. Many organizations, certainly a lot of the banks, I was at one bank, 3,000 people, 3,000 live applications. They could all have one each. Now, some of them were just a spreadsheet, but you know, they had, through acquisition, they had multiples of each banking system. Now, if you pull sets of those together into one Agile release train, you can empower the teams to switch them off, to pick the one they like the most and move stuff around and all of that kind of stuff. So yes, you may well have an Agile release train with multiple products, but they're going to be unified either by technology or business or something that gives you a shared mission. If your team has 5 people who never work together, doing their own thing, you know, they have a Kanban board, they all have their own row, right? They never talk, they never work, then they're just not a team.
Okay, so, okay, yeah. Another question to you from Ian as well.
I have read many attacks on SAFe. 99% of them are factually incorrect, and that pulls anything else away, right? Something's not on the big picture, so they say it's not there, right? People said, oh, safe, it must be rubbish, customer's not visible, but customer was not visible in any of their pictures, right? So I put it down basically to the fact it's successful. So it's the incumbent. We got to just
as long as it helps to generate business results, I think businesses will buy in. Okay, so another better question over here, and I think this is a good question. Are frameworks supposed to be religiously followed in order to yield the benefits it promotes? Are frameworks actually tweakable, measurable, or to be removed of some parts? Have you seen any organization with Frankenstein Agile model that work well from them? Wow, this is very mouthful. And it's also from Ian, but it's from Ian Poon.
Frankenstein model.
Yeah,
That's
Frankenstein model.
I have successfully implemented a common operating model that allowed teams of teams to choose whether they did safe or less or Nexus or Scrum at Scale or whatever they made up. But they had to, it was a safe-based common operating model in that they all had to have the same sprints. So we had the heartbeat, we had the big time box, right? And we used epics, features and stories as our standard backlog items. And again, I'm not religious. The reason I like to use epics, features and stories is they're very well defined in safe. I can point people at good guidance, but if they want to call the epic initiative, that's fine. If they want to call the feature, that's okay, right? But at some point, people need to get over their love of their particular framework and go, yeah, it's a feature. Right, yeah, I'm happy to call that a feature. Yeah, that's a story. Don't need to call it whatever else, you know, little thing fits in 2 weeks. So if you can people can get over themselves, right, and accept that common operating model, that gives you the spine for your organization and the measurements, and then people can, yes, you can use less, but your backlog is full of features, right? And then we can measure you all, you see, you've got the same money going around, the same tokens. So been very successful with that. And people who are successful with their frameworks move beyond them. Right? One of the reasons Essential Safe exists is that people were taking the framework safe and they were stopping the important bits and adding loads of rubbish instead, right? Okay, so you've got to have that backbone. And that's hard to find in safe, but it's also hard to find in the other frameworks because everybody loves certain things too much. I love this, it's essential, but hey, Ethan's being successful doing something else. What's common between them? All right. Okay, so there's always that. For people to write this stuff up, they have to really believe in it. And then they cross the line sometimes. But you can have mixed models, but there are a lot of Frankenstein models, and Frankenstein models are where you go back to the old way, right? We have a problem, so we'll appoint some more managers. We have a problem with that, but most of the agile transformations I've seen, they stall and fail because the leadership isn't agile, and if there's a problem, they go back to what they know, right? And everyone I know, Dean, Jeff Sutherland, Scott Amble, everyone's got stories about that. It was going great, and then the new CEO came in, and suddenly we had to go back to the old way, right? So if you've got the quick learning cycles and that culture, it can grow and bloom for many of the frameworks.
I see. Good to know about that. Okay, so there's another question over here. Interesting. Afifi is actually asking, when can we apply design thinking approach in SAFE? Yep.
Well,
it's pretty popular over here in Asia. So yep,
right.
Asking this.
So design thinking is on the big picture. So SAFE explains how to apply design thinking in SAFE, and they have they have a product owner, product manager course, which is about the basics, you know, running backlogs, the stuff that if you're not doing, you're not going to get anything out. But they have an advanced product management course, and it's all about design thinking. So design thinking is a first-class citizen and a fundamental part of SAFe. So if you like design thinking, that would be a good fit. You could go and have a look at the articles in there on design thinking and see if you concur with their approach. But it's in there. It's a little 2 diamond symbol just next to the roles on the big picture.
I see. Yep, good to know about that. Okay, to the audiences, due to time constraint, we are just taking another 2 more questions. So yep, after that, we'll close the session. So, okay, 1 more question is, another rising scale Agile is discipline Agile. Do you, Ian, see that SAFe will be blended with DA like Scrum Bun? This is question from Nan. Yep.
I don't like to talk in too much detail about frameworks I'm not an expert in.
Okay.
Disciplined Agile delivery, Scott Ambler. I know the people who created it, Scott Ambler, Mark Lyons, done work with them in the past. It's trying to help guide you towards the right set of practices. What I don't know is if it has a suitable common operating model, a backbone in there to drive things forward. It is coming from the PMI now, Project Management Institute, and a lot of us don't like projects very much, so I don't know where that plays. What my experience is, all the frameworks I know of are more similar than they are different, and they all have some great ideas in there. So what you want to do is just pick little bits. Jeff Sutherland is working on a big case study that he's very excited about. Quicken rocket loans, mortgages or something like that. They did a huge, something like 17 agile release trains. They halved their cycle times using SAFe. They're really good. One of the teams took Scrum at Scale and the advice in Scrum at Scale, used it as a lens to take their SAFe to the next level. Right? Now they haven't abandoned SAFe because they can't be the only train using a different operating model from all the others. But by bringing in ideas from outside, refreshing their thinking, they've taken their Agile to the next level. So once you've got your Agile teams, you're aligned around value, it should be that incremental evolutionary change, right? Not going, oh, we're gonna rename everybody, right? Oh, we're not gonna have teams, we're gonna have squads and tribes and blah, 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 blah. And you'll do that and nothing will have changed other than the words, right? So,
Yep. Okay, 1 last question, Ian. Okay, this is from Kamala. And she's actually asking that, can you please share the challenges that you have faced in getting the team to prepare during PI planning, and how much preparation for PI planning is actually sufficient?
Right. So, I did publish a series of blogs on the Eva Jacobson International website on the life cycle of features and preparing features. One of the big challenges I've seen is PI planning is tough. If you've ever been involved, it's a very intense, it's a hard thing, and you struggle to get stuff done in the time. And what people do is they make the mistake, and the mistake is, right, next time we will do this and we will do it better. The mistake is to go, next time we'll do it different. Right? I know organizations who, because they don't like to spend 2 days in PI planning, everyone spends 4 days preparing for PI planning. Right? So it's 1 day in a room together, but 5 actual days of everyone's effort. This is crazy thinking. So I'm very much a believer in very lightweight. The 3 C's, card, conversation, confirmation. Features are lightweight tokens saying, I've got an idea how we can make our system better. Now, someone has to be able to explain that idea, and other people have to understand it. Right? In most big systems, the person who comes up with it can explain it, and the people being asked to do it can understand it, because that's their life's work. Right? So I like to keep things light, move fast. Right? Literally have the features just be that. We have little lists about whether they're architecturally significant and things like that. But I'd recommend having a read of the blog series on features and feature preparation and avoiding the return to waterfall and order placing. So there's some stuff around that.
Thank you, Ian. It was such a powerful 1-hour speech, and really enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much for doing this with us. At CI Agile, we are trying to give you the best knowledge, the best mind, so that you can listen to all of them and pick and choose yourself whichever that makes sense to you. So if you want to see a replay of these sessions, please remember to follow CI Agile LinkedIn page. When the recording is ready, we'll publish it on our YouTube channel, and then we'll broadcast the availability on our LinkedIn channel. So just follow us on LinkedIn, and you'll get all this update, right? So for all of you that spend more than an hour with us, thank you so much, right? I'm sure it's just like my son, he can't wait. I'm sure that you have your family and you can't wait as well. So enjoy yourself. Ian is going to join us. Jeff Stight is going to join us, and Al Shalloway is going to join us next week on the 12th, right? Where all three of these guys is going to come in here, and I am going to ask them very tough questions, right? Like, Agile transformations always fail. What are we going to do about it according to your school of thoughts? And then you see three people having three different kind of thoughts and solutions. There'll be a lot of crossover, and it's all to your benefit. So please remember to tune in to us next week. We are all looking forward to a great conversation. So thank you, everybody, and good night. Enjoy yourself.
Have a great weekend. Guys, again next week.